morning, Turfs Up Radio. Wayne Bowles, Profits Unlimited, coming to you live. Yes, we're alive from Louisville, Kentucky. Yes, indeedy. Oh, my goodness. Hope everybody's having a great morning. Sun's trying to sneak out here a little bit now. Yay. We had rain yesterday afternoon and evening and overnight, but it's moved east and south of us. So, yes, indeedy. Off to a little bit of a wet start this morning, but hey, uh, just slowed mowing crews up a little bit, but everybody else was out on time. We just held mowing crews back a little bit for just give it a little bit of time, before we start getting out there on the yards doing that. So give them a little bed maintenance type work to before we start getting the lawnmowers out and about and getting our mowing done. But we got quite a few different things going on today here at WLS. So hopefully you guys have got a lot going on. We'll talk about that here in a minute, but wanted to find out who had a good Cinco de Mayo yesterday. Everybody make it back into work today. You know that sometimes you get that middle of the week thing going, and it's like, oh man, and you go out and you may overindulge just a little bit, but hopefully everybody made it into work today. And had a guy actually come in today, was talking about they went out and never got their food. The place was so busy. There was 8 of them that went out. 4 of them got food. 4 of them didn't. So that was a misfortunate event. So whenever that happens to you, and things like that happen, but it's never fun when they happen to you. That's the thing. So it's kind of like weird things happening within your business. They happen. But you just like, oh God, why'd that have to happen, kind of thing, but they do. So you move along and you deal with it and adapt, improvise, and overcome, as they say. So that's what's going on with that. But yeah, we had a good Cinco de Mayo, Tab and I, at the house. So we had fajitas, and I will say it was not one of my finer fajitas, if I will. So I don't know what I did differently other than I tried. Well, okay, I said I don't know what I did differently. We always talk about change, right? And try something different, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. So I got this brainstorm yesterday when I was cooking my chicken and peppers and stuff. I thought I'm going to try 2 different seasoning mixes. So I did together. Yeah. You ever done it, Katie? No, and I probably won't again. But it was okay, but it wasn't as good as, like, they're both good by themselves. Ortega was the one brand, and then most everybody in the planet's heard of that if you do any type of taco seasoning. And then I was using a seasoning called Dano's taco seasoning, which is actually, it's a national brand, but the guy that developed and has put that out there is actually from Louisville, Kentucky. And but anyways, mixing the 2 together wasn't probably a good idea. I did it, and it was okay, and like I said, they're both good on their own, but they weren't a good blend together. So if ever you want to get creative and try 2 different seasonings, and maybe you already have and you got some success you want to share, be sure to text me and let me know. But I wouldn't do it again. I'll put it like that. It was just okay, and independently they're both pretty good, but together it wasn't my favorite thing. So but it's hey, that's what we do it for. So Mike sent me a text. I'll get that. I'll check that out here in just a second. Mike can read it, but he's always got great input. But yeah, so that's what I did. Hopefully you had some Cinco de Mayo. Daniel, what'd you have last night? You're pretty Jeff chicken?
chicken and
Chicken.
spaghetti.
Yay. So I think Kyle said he went up to, they thought they were getting up to this place pretty early yesterday. It was, I think he said 10 after 5, and they already had like a 30 or 40-minute wait,
Oh yeah.
so I'm sure they were all rocking and rolling yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I think
So,
that to be early somewhere is a new definition because so many people work from home. You don't a lot of people don't have the I get off at 5, I get home at 5:30 or 5:45, and then I'm another 15 minutes before I leave and another 20 minutes before maybe I get somewhere.
yeah,
Now it's like, oh, my work day, let's say it does end at 5. Even at that, a lot of people can be out the door by 5:15,
right.
So
Yeah,
instead of 6:30 that people used to get to restaurants, now it's 5:30 is now most people are already there.
yeah. That is true. That's a really good point. So, and I guess everybody had the same idea of, hey man, let's cut out a little early and go enjoy a fajita and libation of choice. Mike said, speaking of change, he's 8 days. Daniel, you appreciate this. He's 8 days without a beer or soda or any sugary drink. So he's drinking water, unsweetened tea, and black coffee only. He said he's starting to feel the
When
effects of it. He's feeling better already, he said, in just 8 days.
here's the thing. Katie just said you might as well drink whatever water. When you don't have 20 to 30 to 40 grams of sugar in a drink, you actually like, and we talked about this on my show couple weeks ago. Um, like your palate starts to appreciate the flavor of tea, right? Like you were drinking tea because you like the flavor of the sugar, and the tea was that's my
The
carrier.
carrier.
But whenever you cut, and I experienced this with my diet recently when I had to cut out a lot of stuff, you appreciate the very minute flavor of something that is what you get.
That makes sense. Yeah. That makes
So I'm
really
sure
good
the tea
sense.
to him at this point probably tastes like, Milo's or Arizona with the full sweetness. It's probably like a great treat when you get something that is
Got
besides water.
but got some flavor to it, but not crazy.
Right.
That's interesting. Yeah, but that is, man, I mean, that does make really good sense too. So
And I think he actually might have been, it was him or somebody that said something about tomatoes having the same experience with tomatoes.
tasting better.
Tasting better. I can't remember the exact scenario he laid out, but something about since whatever he started to enjoy the flavor of tomatoes.
So with a
Had something to
palate
do
change of less sugar
with
or
less
whatever.
intense flavors. Yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of use the example of like if you have an apple and a brownie, and you take a bite of the brownie, and then you go to take the bite of the apple's gonna taste like bland. It's literally gonna taste way less sweet versus if you ate a bite of the apple first.
Hmm.
Like it's a real thing.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Mike said, yeah, the unsweetened tea is his treat now, and it tastes
Yeah.
good. Katie's over there going, bat. Oh, shoot. But, anyways, oh, Lord. How do we get on this? we were talking about um, fajitas and taco
Oh
seasoning.
yeah.
That's it. Yeah. We're like, I thought it was just my memory. I was glad to see you had a little slip, Daniel, there for second. But anyways, yeah, we had the Cinco de Mayo at home, and then everything went good, and everything was great, man. So it is fun to go out though on special holidays like that. And but hey, here we are. We're back around to another Wednesday. Can y'all believe that? May 6th, we're Derby's over with, cruising toward Memorial Day. That'll be our next. Hey, how much can we get done before Memorial Day for people? So um, we got a pretty good book of work scheduled up. So hopefully you guys do too. And hey, we always looking to add more. So got those marketing dollars working for us, trying to get a good return on investment and keep things rolling. So we're doing a little mowing today, some landscape work today. Got a pretty good little landscape job we're working on today. Started yesterday a little bit with it, and we'll get finished with it today, maybe. So that's moving along pretty good. And like I said, trying to finish up round two with our fert and weed. We didn't spray the last couple days, and probably could have yesterday, but just decided not to take advantage of that 6 hour window or so that we had. But so today looks good, and tomorrow and Friday looks good. So we'll finish up round two on that. Hopefully, your all's progression of the work and services and the amount of scheduled work is looking good. Not only your reoccurring work, but your one offs um, makes it all worthwhile. So but as we talk about, getting things done one at a time, it's about the way we do it here on Turf's Up Radio, right? I mean, one host at a time. Turf Nerds got us kicked off and rolling this morning, Evan and Greg with their show, and then Eric and Jennifer, and then Daniel with the Pump Station. And I want to give a big shout out to King Darren Gruner, by the way, for helping me getting my desktop figured out with our app that we use to remote in to do our show. Because like now I'm doing and then daily we do it on Daniel's laptop, but I've got an app and I had a little app issues, so Darren helped me get that squared away. And now if something happens with Daniel's laptop or Daniel's out of town or whatnot, I think I'll be good to go again. So but I did want to give Darren a shout out for your help on that, man, and walking me through that. So John said it's raining up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. They're calling it a day. So I hear you. That always stinks. But hey, that's the same thing, I mean, get out and get a couple hours in. If you can get a couple hours in. Takes about that time frame generally to make it worthwhile, the organization and to get out, you know. Um, but yeah, Mike said it's pretty wet down there today. He said they switched into the landscape mode as well down there where he's at. Small mulch jobs. Going to bury a couple downspouts. Ta-da! There you go, buddy. You have a couple happy customers at the end of the day. That's just it. We keep them happy one at a time. And then that makes the whole world go around pretty good. Hey, I was listening to Eric and Jennifer today, and it's something I want to share with you guys. And I assume they were live. I caught the end of their broadcast, but they were sharing something that the Turf Nerds were going to be on live news channel called Newsmax tonight at 6. So that's pretty cool. So your very own show host here on Turf's Up Radio going to be on some national. I assume it's national news, Newsmax. I need to look it up and see exactly what it is. But you familiar with that, Daniel? At all?
Heard the term before, yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm not big in the news world, so
yeah, Daniel watches news about as much as I read nutrition. I trust Daniel for whatever he says. So he does his due diligence on nutrition. So, uh, but anyways, big shout out to the Turf Nerds. Absolutely. So, if you got a chance tonight, check it out. And if not, I'm sure that it's on a podcast, so you can go back and check it out. It's really cool to think you get that national recognition like that. So. With that being said, let's take a short break. Alrighty then, welcome back to Profit Time here on Turf's Up Radio. Yes, it is your industry. It's our industry, and it's our industry to take care of. And how do we take care of it? Well, we take care of our individual companies, and as we take care of our individual companies, everybody does better, the industry does better, and the industry is more professional. And that is the goal. Professionalism is not an accident. A lot of things, there's a lot of different, we talked about that the other day, a little bit, but about pride and professionalism. And that is the basis for the success of any business is having pride in what you're doing and being a professional about how you do it. And, that's what we all need to think a little bit harder on, and try to fine tune more and more as we go along, and as we run our businesses, and willing to make some changes. And um, it's not always about more of something. And I want to give Daniel a pat on the back on a good blog he put out in the Profit Circle uh, just yesterday. When it's when one more stops being good, is that isn't the exact title of it, but the idea was, behind it. Check it out if you're in the Profit Circle with us, and if you'd like to see it otherwise, hop on the Profit Circle and join. You get a free 7-day trial, and there's no restrictions at all, right, Daniel? To it, I mean, it's you're 100%. 100% see everything in there. So it's not like, oh, everything's hiding behind a wall, got a free trial, can't see anything. It's all in there,
Yeah.
everything.
Well, also the idea for it came from Craig, so
Yeah.
shout out to him too.
Credit out to, Shout out to Craig. And also, we got a video that new video we put up. Shout out to Craig. Was talking about, you know, what do you think's best, 410s or 5/8? And I'm looking forward to your all's input on that as well, and happily take your input on that here on Turfs Up Radio. But yeah, we put that video out as well. So and I think anytime that you can just be more efficient in what you're doing, whether that is a 4 10-hour days or 5 8-hour days, or however you want to set it up. um, you know that's the key. Is And sometimes the challenge to that change, regardless of what it is, whether you're going to 4 days a week or you're going to 5 days a week, or as you're scaling your business, if you're going to 3 days a week, whatever it is, know that there is transition period in there, that there's going to be, it's probably like a whole lot of changes that you've made within your business. I know it's happened to me a lot, Daniel. When sometimes you start second guess the change,
Mm.
like, man, should we really have done that? But if just stay the course, give it an opportunity, whatever it is, to prove itself out,
Yeah.
because regardless of what it is, that you're going to meet some resistance to it, and a lot of that resistance comes in the form of, because it's change, and human nature. I mean, that's just a reality too. Human nature almost tells us to resist change. Is that a fair
Yeah.
way of saying that?
I think
You know,
it's what changes is unknown, and I think that's one of the base fears of for us is the unknown.
yeah,
It's the same reason we're afraid of the dark, because we don't know what's out there.
it's a whole lot easier doing the same thing over and over than it is to say, "Hey, man, let's do this a different way and see what happens." Speaking of doing it a different way, oh my! I got a call yesterday from our. Excuse me, your cough. Got a call yesterday from our salt distributor. I know it's only May 6th, right? And this is probably the earliest they've ever reached out to us. So I'm sharing it here today on Turfs Up, just because it's important enough to me to let you guys know that you need to check it out. Whether you're doing bag material, bulk material, whatever you're doing, according to two different distributors that I've talked to yesterday, um, number one, ice melter's not going back to where it was at. We all knew that. That's not profound news. But percentage of increase might be greater than what you think. So I know, some of you guys have got ongoing contracts. Some of you guys are working on new contracts, snow and ice contracts at this point. Do your due diligence as always, and reach out and with your distributor and find out what you think or what they think material pricing may be. I know ours were saying currently white salt's up about 15%, and it's probably going higher, but that's they're working through the end of last year's material. So I'm not saying your area is going to be 15% up. Maybe it's 20% down. Who knows? Maybe you'd be on the lucky side of that. But like I told them, I said I'm just not in a position to take any more early order because we've committed. We in ordering last year, just to stay ahead of the game and not make sure we didn't run out. We've got two extra bins of material already full and on hand that we would normally have some type of mulch or rock in at this point. But we just always are very proactive on materials, so making sure we've got what we need when we need it. But I share the salt thing with you because two reasons. One is, hey, find out what it's going to be in your market. This was white salt only treated material that both of these distributors have available. They don't have any firm pricing on it. They haven't start actually stockpiling the treated material because they haven't started treating it yet. Predominantly, you know. So trying to find out where that's going to be as well. But currently, like I said, in our market, it's about 15% up, probably going to 25 to 30% up from last year. So it's still going to be affordable, not as bad as it was at the peak of shortages last year. I mean, because that got really crazy, you know.
What was their reason for continuation of the double in the
He
current?
just said the manufacturers, not the manufacturers, the salt mines, like your Axel salts and those type of companies that are mining it, just it was the market's up, and so they're going to keep it up a little bit. Same thing you and I were talking about yesterday on flights, wasn't it? Me and
Right.
you,
Yeah.
yeah. Where
I mean, I could see, which I don't necessarily agree with, it staying up just for the fact of it. Hey, this is where it already is, but to double what you already are doing for an increase potentially seems
yeah.
interesting.
Well, I don't think they're doubling according to him, but who knows where it will end up, But I think some pricing that he was shooting around was somewhere around $108 to $112 a ton for white salt. If you early order it,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm sure we'll. This is going to sound crazy. I'm sure we'll we'll contract for some. I just don't know how much because we've got a lot around here for us. Some of you guys, what we got and they're calling a lot's not, it might be an out, you know,
Yeah.
but, that's all relevant to the volume of work you're doing.
Yeah.
But I remember when a ton of material was a lot for me, but we've got our whole reserve bin full plus two additional bins. And I don't know, probably at least two truckloads of bagged material here. So we're ready for a good start. If it snows tomorrow, we'll be all right.
There you go. You know what is great about this whenever, the big industries of commodities and transportation get to do whatever they want with pricing. We all know that the inevitable upside of that is that employees get a good cut of the increase as well, right? That's not staying in just the
Even
Tier
you
1
can't say
position.
that. You can't say that without laughing, Dave. Oh
And then
my
we wonder
goodness.
why we have inflation and we have people that can't, afford the products anymore.
Yeah, can't afford the products. I guess the good side, if there's a good side to it, I mean, it forces people to think more about cost and cost recovery.
Definitely.
Snow is one of those services that the market in most all markets it's high enough anyway, where even guys that don't know what they don't know make decent money on snow. But this material going up like they're talking about it going up is certainly going to close that gap and make us think a little bit. But and then another thing that I kind of halfway joking about it with our distributor. I said, "Well, what about freight?" And he said, "Man, you don't even want to talk about freight right now." He said, 2x of where it was at least. Who knows where it's going to end up, you know? And I got a little problem with that. I mean, fuel pricing has not doubled. Yeah, it's up a dollar something a gallon, let's call it. Let's say it's up $2 a gallon, which it's not there yet, but that still doesn't justify a 2x rate in freight. Your other costs haven't changed, you know. Still the truck, it's still
It is
maintenance
what it
on the
is, though,
truck,
right? I
but
mean,
it
it's
but
just the fact that, hey, if they can do it, why can't trucking do it? Why can't,
yeah,
Big Banana do it? Why can't,
yeah,
whoever?
everybody's going to do it. So, you know, so we'll see where that ends up too, but I did just want to throw that out there for a few minutes and let you guys know that yeah, you might just be thinking, all right, well, snow's put away good now, everything's out of sight out of mind for a couple months, but put that material put that material hat on here pretty soon and reach out to your distributor or your supplier or whoever you're buying from and just get their 2 cents worth on it. And if you've got the capacity to get some material and have it on hand, I'd certainly consider that for most areas, to say the least. So with that being said, hey, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Speaking of battery operated equipment, Daniel, I would like to share with everybody that we've added a couple more pieces of 2 cycle equipment to our fleet this week. And big shout out to Bluegrass Lawn and Garden on getting that for us. But a couple of the hedge clippers, the steel hedge clippers, and hedge trimmers, head clippers. And excited. Today was the first day they actually went out, and we'll get some feedback from our guys and today and see what they think and how they perform. And I'm sure it'll be different. I'm sure it'll be different. Oh gosh, but I think overall, once we get used to the change, kind of like what we talked about earlier, it just be getting through that change cycle. But when we start running numbers on it on 2 cycle equipment, specifically hedge trimmers, uh, it really became a no brainer that we put a couple, two, three of them in our fleet and see what we think about it. And it's crazy. I mean, just on a not getting into a whole cost sheet thing because we're not going to do that today, but that is one advantage to our know why you charge what you charge spreadsheets. Quickly, you can run a piece of any piece of equipment through there and find out, hey, what's it cost us to run this hedge trimmer versus a fossil fuel hedge trimmer, and just from the fuel standpoint, if you will, in other words, the electric versus fuel consumption. And here's the thing, and Carissa helped me understand this too, is fuel rates are obviously are different all over the country. Okay, but so's electricity cost all over the country is different. But in our particular market here in Louisville, we looked up what we pay for a kilowatt hour, and that was on our invoice that we get every month. So to be probably on yours as well. So we were looking at, hey, what's it cost us per kilowatt hour for electric? And something that Carissa helped me with too on this is, in a lot of markets, day versus night can be a different cost on kilowatt hours. Okay. But just looking at it from a kilowatt hour standpoint, our fuel cost when we're running gasoline through our 2 cycle equipment, just gasoline and 2 cycle mix. Okay, that works out to like 94 cents a run hour labor, or a running hour on that equipment. To run that new trimmer, okay, same cutting bar on it. Okay, y'all gonna think I'm lying when I tell you this, but it's 2 cents per running hour for the electric. Okay. So immediately we've cut 92 cents an hour of cost just on the fuel and 2 cycle mix. not to mention maintenance and everything else that we're not going to have on the unit. So that's where before, you guys have heard me talk about it. That's why it's important to understand that, and the cost is not crazy on the unit itself. I mean, the ones we got were about $400. Okay, a little under $400 a piece. So the price isn't crazy when compared to the purchase price for a gasoline powered hedge trimmer versus an electric hedge trimmer. And immediately we've reduced our cost by 92 cents an hour just on the fuel, if you will, electric versus fossil fuel gasoline and two cycle mix. So I thought that was a pretty cool thing I wanted to share with you all. Again, and this time, and what we did with it, we went with a medium range battery. Okay, we didn't go with the smallest one or the largest one. We looked at we went with the medium range battery. I think it's the AP300 battery that we went with on ours, and that gives us like 2.5 hours, theoretically 2.5 hours of runtime before we need to switch a battery out. Okay, so which I think is a fair amount of time and reduces a little bit of weight rather than going to the bigger battery. Okay, for that unit, and total all in weight is not too crazy. I think it was around 10 pounds with battery and unit. You know, um, so it was funny this morning when one of the guys took it. He said, "Well, one thing with this, it won't get lighter as the fuel burns out." So that's one thing. Obviously, I mean the weight's going to be consistent with it, but there's not a whole lot of fuel in any of those hedge trimmers anyway, where you're going to notice a significant amount of difference. But we're looking forward to seeing, what the longevity is on it, and which they appear to be good. All what we've heard from different contractors. So I shared my story with you just so you guys maybe start thinking about this as well. We hear fuel prices, fuel prices, fuel prices, and yeah, fuel prices are going to go back down. Okay, that's the reality of it too. But what bad economic conditions do, and not just, I'm not referencing just what's going on with us with fuel issues now, but through history, with economic swings up and down, would that affect inflation rates and or fuel pricing. We always we as business owners, we're much more cognizant of cost during economic downturns, right? And which is a good thing, right? But I guess the question really is, why aren't you this cognizant of cost and understanding break even points and return on investments, and man, this is really eating into my profit margin, and why aren't you that concerned about it all the time? You should be. And then you've got a plan, and you can develop and implement a plan against it regardless of the economic conditions. In other words, we didn't just jump into battery because fuel went to, I think we're at 419 now here in Louisville, Kentucky for fuel, somewhere between 411 and 419 a gallon for regular unleaded fuel. Because the reality of it is, like I've talked about before, I mean, we were doing fuel cost at 425 a gallon for the last few years, and it never hit there, on our cost sheets. So we're gonna be able to absorb, if you will, uh, on any existing contracts, this issue. That's why we're not running around with our hands in the air saying, oh my God, what are we going to do? We've anticipated a higher fuel cost in all of our budgeting processes. And that's just the way we do it. We anticipate higher than what we think it's going to go. And then what we simply do now is if we think, hey, this is going to be a long term adventure, then we simply go into our cost sheets for trucks, lawnmowers, trimmers, blowers, sprayers, whatever, anything that's running fuel, and go to make one line item change from 425 to whatever we want to change it to, and it readjusts our cost per hour all the way down line for us. It's just that simple, So, and you don't have to make it as hard as we make it a lot of times, setting up a budget and doing a budget. And yes, it's very important, when we think about fuel costs, but most people aren't mowing acres at a time. Now we all have bigger properties, but I mean, people, you guys out there that are doing residential lawns, I mean, quickly, I broke this down the other day for a guy, and I thought, well, hey, man, we're going to hang on to this and talk about it on radio. You know, the difference between 375 a gallon for fuel and 475 a gallon for fuel, obviously, is a dollar, right? But and this goes back to knowing the other side of your business too. And this is why it's important, like I was talking about a few minutes ago, you got to watch your numbers all the time, not just when you see a price influx in fuel, but excuse me, the difference between 375 and 475 a gallon for a normal lawn, and what we consider a normal lawn may not be what you consider a normal lawn, right? But that's 7,000 square feet or less for us. Okay. That turns into like a 13-minute stop on average. Okay. So what I did for this company was, and what we look at even with our own, but this all makes sense. What that dollar a gallon difference equates to is about 40 cents per lawn that is in that 15-minute or less category. So it's 40 cents or less. Okay. That's based on fuel at $4.75 a gallon versus $3.75 a gallon. So here's my whole point. We're panicking tremendously over something that is a 40-cent adjustment on a lot of residential lawns that we're mowing. Or let's just say, I can hear some of you guys out there saying, well, Wayne, I don't do anything that small. Everything we do, is an acre. Well, that's fine then. So, hey, I'll calculate, hey, what's my run time on an acre? Okay. Generally, you're going to be somewhere, around, as far as actual mow time, at an 80% efficiency factor, somewhere around 2 acres an hour. Even at that rate, even at that rate, you're only looking at what a $43-$4.20. So and that's probably an overkill. So what it really boils down to, and see, this is how easy it is when you really know your numbers. It's not the stop that's an acre or less, or a half acre or less, or 10,000 square feet. That's not what's got you tore up, or it shouldn't be. It's what you got you tore up because you don't know what you don't know. But what really is messing you up probably is route density. Now you're finding out that, hey, man, it don't make sense to go mow Miss Smith's yard on Wednesday because she wants it done on Wednesday, but I'm doing everybody else in the area on Monday or Friday or Thursday. So what we got to do is start looking more in our businesses and ask ourselves, what are we doing from a route density standpoint? And not only route density, but what are we doing from the standpoint of, hey, maybe my most profitable thing I'm going to do is not take this account at all. And don't only look at it that, God, I'm trying to think of the right word, what I'm trying to say. Don't look at it as that being important now and not every day in your business. It's important every day. But when you've got so much drive time involved now, and you're pulling it with that F-250 or whatever. I just said an F-250. I don't care what you're pulling it with, you know. But when you're pulling it with a truck that's getting 7 to 10 miles a gallon on a good day with a truck and trailer and load it with equipment, it becomes a big deal when you're backtracking on a 14 or 15-mile trip. Yeah, now you're talking about some money. So let's look at route density all the time. Let's look at, does it make sense to, well, she's been a customer a long time and that's just the way they want it done. And if I don't do it, somebody else will. And, you've got to have yourself covered one way or another. You've either got to cover yourself in the option within your contract to add a fuel surcharge. And that's a lot of people have added those since '08. Okay. They still don't have a good understanding of why they're charging what they're charging, but they do have some verbiage within their contract. A lot of people about, hey, if price range is here, we can go 10%, 8%, 7%, whatever percentage they've calculated. So we have, as an industry, protected ourselves a little bit. But if you really want to protect yourself, break that number even down further in a know why you charge what you charge basis for, and then come up with what that for your equipment and your labor due to drive time, right? Okay. And then also ask yourself, are you willing to make some changes on some accounts? Because it is the most profitable thing to do, is to make a change and to say no to somebody. Now there also is that time of the year when you say, man, I'm trying to build a route, and I understand that 100%. Take the time, build the route. But are you going to build that route organically, or are you going to try to build that route either by buying some accounts from somebody, okay, spending additional marketing dollars, or do you just want it to be 100% organic based on people seeing your truck in an area and or referrals within a given area? Okay, so again, all these things break down into little categories and little efficiencies that you can add to your business. That's kind of what we talked about with Craig when we responded to his question in the profit circle on what's better, 410s or 5/8. They can both be effective, but any time that you can reduce organizational time, and what I mean by that is load and unload time, whether loading and unloading the trailer or just backing it in and detaching it or leaving the whole thing there. But hey, load, unload in in gas stations, or unbilled hours in most cases to somebody. Now, somebody that really has a good handle on their numbers understands that, you know, they understand that, hey, what percentage of my day is inefficient? How many people am I paying to load? And I'm kind of getting off the fuel thing for a second, but it's kind of in there together. How many people, do you have punched in that are, just putting lawnmowers and string trimmers on a trailer each day, or taking them off, or backing that trailer in, and, whatever. I mean, realistically, that's a one person job. That's a one person job. It doesn't need to be three people, because you get to what's called the law of diminishing returns on talent. On how much is there to be done by people? So my whole point is, let's don't just be smarter when fuel prices go up. Let's let the fuel price issue that turns that light on for us leave the light on that says, hey, I need to look at things on a regular basis, from efficiencies and inefficiencies, And now, hey, what can I do to save fuel? I mean, that's the reality of it, right? What can I do to save fuel, which is certainly a significant cost of doing business, but also is labor and also unbilled hours during the day that a lot of times we don't think about. So keep an eye on things all the time. Let this catalyst of fuel costs being at 4.50 a gallon, let's call it, whatever. You know what the fuel costs are in your own market. Hell, our fuel costs here in Louisville, Kentucky range, in the 390s all the way to 426, depending on what part of the city you're in. So I know it fluctuates everywhere, but that's why it boils down to what are you doing within your cost recovery process, and what is your golden circle? Do you have a golden service circle of, hey, this is what our minimums are within this circle? But when you get outside that distance, whether it's 5 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles, it doesn't matter to me what you set up as yours. But what you need to know when you set your golden circle up, that once you go past that line, your cost increase dramatically from a labor and fuel standpoint. And you've got to pass that price increase along to the customer, which means I'm going to make a number up. Your $50 minimum is no longer a $50 minimum for a residential lawn. Maybe it's 62 because of the extra windshield time and the extra fuel cost. Okay. Because the windshield time directly affects your labor cost. So now you got to ask yourself, hey, when is it best to say no to somebody? Well, it's best to say no to somebody when you understand, hey, where your break even point is, and am I going to be able to make my desired profit margin? And am I willing to take a little smaller profit margin to build up some route density in that area? That's why I said it's a lot of little things. But as much as I hate fuel costs where they're at, okay, it's going to do things. It's going to make a lot of companies better. Okay, it fixed us in '08 from being better at looking at not just route density, but how many routes we had. Number one, but also looking at it from a standpoint of, okay, how do we not have this problem again? And that's for us to set our fuel cost at a number higher than we think is a realistic expectation. And 4.25 a gallon is always taking care of it for us. So we've never had to be that company that comes and says, hey, we're going to have to add a fuel surcharge. That's why we promote our price as our price. But it's because we've got higher fuel costs built into our cost per hour that we're bidding the job at anyway. you know. And Mike, you're right. It's going to thin the herd out a little bit again. It always does. You know, it's going to thin the herd out a little bit, and that's okay. I don't wish anybody bad luck, but the only thing I wish is that each and every company cared enough about their company. And I know you care about your company. Don't hear this the wrong way, okay? But I just wish everybody cared enough about their company to be this concerned about each and every one of their operating expenses and how to implement that into their cost per hour of operation so they can have a better company. And although we hate the aspect of fuel costs being where they're at, every one of us do, you don't have to be in a panic mode if you've made an allocation within your budgeting process for it. So that's where we're at. Appreciate you guys. And, I know I kind of got on a little bit of a soapbox here today about fuel cost and fuel pricing surcharges. And, but, look at battery equipment too. These manufacturers have come a long, long way with the excellent battery powered equipment. And cost per hour of operation significantly reduces, which in turn return for you is higher profit margins without raising your prices. And that's a win-win for everybody. Have a great day. And remember, profit's not a dirty word.